I'm Joanne Lipson-Freed, and I'm an associate professor of English at Oakland University and a member of the International Society for the Study of Narrative. Here's an example of how I use narrative theory in my work as an intersectional ethnic studies scholar. As a note, this video discusses the topic of sexual assault. Do you do work that connects narrative analysis to questions of social justice? If so, consider submitting your own short video to the ISSN's Narrative for Social Justice initiative. Rhetorical narrative theory helps us understand how readers' expectations shape their interpretation of a literary text. Peter Rabinowitz, for instance, compares a novel to an unassembled swing set. The set comes with instructions, but I must also rely on my own tools and competencies to assemble it. What's more, it's possible for the pieces of the swing set to be put together in unintended ways. The swing set still works, but perhaps not as its creators envisioned. So, let's turn now to Junot Díaz's 2007 novel, The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. In Díaz's novel, the story of Oscar de Leon's brief and wondrous life is narrated by Junior and fundamentally shaped by Junior's values and investments, including his particular brand of hypersexualized, heteronormative masculinity. If you've read the novel, you know that Junior definitely has some issues with women. But does Díaz? Are Junior's attitudes ones that the text itself sanctions or shares? For some readers, the answer to this question is informed by factors outside the text, including Díaz's own established reputation as a progressive, the allegations of sexual misconduct levied against him in 2018 by women including Zinzi Clemens, Carmen Maria Machado, and Monica Byrne, and his own public admission that he himself is a survivor of sexual assault. Indeed, it's not just literary texts that can be assembled in multiple ways based on the interpretive conventions brought to bear on them. Survivor testimony is also notably subject to reading practices that range from hostile to sympathetic. Trust survivors is an interpretive convention that comes from outside the text, a way to assemble the swing set. It is interested and it is political, but no more so than any other reading practice. And the imperative to trust survivors, in this case both Díaz and his accusers, informs the way I make sense of Oscar Wilde and its paratexts. Many academic readers, trained to read for meanings beneath the surface, see Junior's misogyny as a form of implicit critique. It is an instance in which, as Rabinowitz puts it, a narrative convention is undermined not by overthrowing it, but rather by following it in such an ostentatious way that it looks absurd. If we assemble the text in this way, Junior's misogyny is too outlandish to take seriously. He is an unreliable narrator, and the novel's readers are in league with its implied author in recognizing his flaws. On the other hand, the sexual assault allegations against Díaz determine the interpretation of an otherwise ambiguous novel for some other readers. For example, one reader admits, when I read Díaz, I hoped he was critiquing misogynist culture, as opposed to writing about his own attitudes, until I started hearing things about his behavior. For still other readers, Díaz's fiction plays a role in adjudicating the believability of the sexual misconduct allegations against him. Author Roxane Gay, for instance, asserts that anyone who has read Díaz's work is likely not surprised to hear that he is a misogynist. And in a different way, Díaz himself also uses his fiction to set the terms of interpretation for his autobiographical narrative, citing Junior's conspicuous silences as an illustration and perhaps a corroboration of his own unspeakable trauma and its enduring harm. I'm compelled by all of these readings, even though at times they might seem to be in tension with one another. And that's why it's so helpful to recognize that there are multiple ways to assemble the swing set, that readers bring different interpretive norms and external values to a text, whether it is a novel, a tweet, or a personal essay in The New Yorker. Along with the imperative to trust survivors, I bring a commitment to anti-racist, feminist, and decolonial politics that sees enduring value in many critics' readings of Oscar Wilde, at the same time that my reading of the novel is now legitimately shaped by the paratexts of the sexual assault controversy. And my understanding of how genre shapes interpretation lets me recognize how the survivor narratives offered by Díaz and his accusers differ in ways that reflect the power differentials between them.